It's good that we have a few moments to be amongst lots of children and young people on the screen. It's a privilege for me to work amongst Quaker children and young people. And most of the time it's a pleasure as well. The Quaker children and young people are inspiring. And that's of great credit to the Society of Friends and to many of you who are parents or grandparents or friends in meetings or aunties, uncles. I really welcome this opportunity with Quaker Life Rep Council to focus on children and young people's work this weekend. Our title for the weekend is All Are Welcome, Transforming Our Quaker Communities with Younger Friends. All are welcome, transforming our Quaker communities with younger friends. Kind of sounds good, doesn't it? But I think it's a bold title. I'm not saying that because I came up with it. I didn't. The planning group did. And I think it's bold. What does it mean to welcome all? What might our transformed communities be like? I'm aware, having come to Quaker Life Rep Council quite a lot over the past years, that Rep Council doesn't shy away from tough issues. And I think this weekend we have another one. Today, faith communities are struggling to connect with young adults, with families, with young people, and with children. In addition to the stat you've got up there, I heard a stat yesterday that Church of England churches, the average Church of England church, 3 children attending, and 25% of them don't have any at all. And if you think, well, that's okay, so you're talking about the Church of England, we're Quakers, it's different. You'd be right, it is different. It's worse. It's worse. This is a conservative, generous estimate that a third of Quaker meetings offer children's meeting once a month. We don't have the exact figures. And if you do the maths, and some of you are much better at maths than I am in this room, the figure on the bottom there equates to losing 100 children a year over the last 50 years. Feels a bit careless. And if that continues, by 2030, just after, there'll be none left. You would think, perhaps, that the absence of children and young people as part of faith communities would make us do all we can to treasure them, to hold on to them, to make sure they don't leave. The reality is the opposite. Half, it's the stat that's up there, half the children and young people stop coming to faith communities by the time they're 14. And again, if we think, well, that's not about Quakers, actually the Quaker figures are worrying too. My hunch is that children and young people stop coming to Quaker meetings even earlier than 14 because a more liberal parent probably gives Quaker children the choice earlier, and that's what they choose to do. The average age of Quakers is 64. The average age of a new contact, somebody making contact for the first time with Quakers, is 43. So where are the children and young people newly coming in to our society? It's tough, and it is really tough. This isn't just about us, this is about culture, this is about the society we live in, and this is about finding ways to connect with children, young people and families afresh. I kind of think it's easy for us to feel guilty about this stuff, to feel really bad about this stuff, to have a big down on ourselves. I fall into that too. I don't think that's helpful. I don't think it's helpful. What I want us to be doing this weekend is to get a sense of hope and get a renewed sense of action. I find it interesting that this is said to be true, that where there are children and young people in our faith communities, they are twice more likely to be growing. Alistair and some others did some research recently, a couple of years ago, about getting people to tell stories of their meetings. And let's see what are the things that are the factors that make our meetings vibrant. And one of the things that came out time and time again was children and young people being part of that. And so I wonder if actually the engaging with the younger people in our Quaker meetings is the answer to a whole lot of other stuff too. There are lots of churches that are putting lots of effort into doing things differently. Here's a few examples. You probably see as you go into a town, big banner signs, messy church, come along. Don't. But it's an effort that's being made by churches to be different. There's a whole lot of stuff that the Church of England's doing about fresh expressions. In the Methodist Church, there's been a big focus on youth participation and some radically different alternatives. Lots of different stuff. And in Quakers too, we're doing stuff differently. We're trying some stuff. There's a recognition that the role of bridge people between young people and adults in the form of youth workers was something that makes a difference to young people. And as a result of that, there are 2 pilots going on in the west of England and in Yorkshire where youth workers are employed. Naomi's here as an example, one of the advocates for the young adults work that is fresh and new and going on. We have a pack here that's been around for a few years which encourages meetings to look at how you might be different as a meeting in order to engage with your community differently. We haven't got any paper copies of this left, but you can get it on the Being Friends Together website for nothing. Is that right?
It's absolutely true.
Absolutely free. There's at least one vibrancy worker here, who's back there, who could talk to you about what vibrancy is doing in meetings. So we are trying stuff, and that's great. But it's not going to be the whole answer. There is no one single fix to make this change be different. I kind of feel we need to recognise the value, particularly, of intergenerational relationships and opportunity. What opportunities can we find to be together? How can we come alongside our children and young people? I do think age-specific stuff is good and necessary, but where possible, can we avoid always being separate? Can we make it so that the children and young people are fully valued, they're equal, they have meaningful roles, they're part of decision-making, and they're really valued as part of what we are offering? 2 words up here. Welcome's part of our title. Helen's going to be talking to us tomorrow about welcome. What does that mean? I think invitation's important too. Invitation. How do we communicate to people what it is that we are and we have? What might it look like if we really are saying all are welcome? How can we provide a safe space for people to be themselves and ask questions? Can all those that we come into contact with experience consistent love and care, even though they might be transitory and they might not be with us very often? They might be sporadic. We're going to treasure those people that come amongst us. I'm going to shut up in a minute. This weekend we're going to hear from young people, from children, and we're going to hear a bit about their experience of Quaker meeting, and that will be insightful, I'm sure. We're also going to think about what our meetings might be like so that all are welcome. We're going to have the chance tomorrow afternoon to experience workshops that are available freely we'll come and do them. Workshops for meetings to think about some of the issues for them. As we journey together this weekend, I want to offer you 4 queries that you might hold with you and take along with you this weekend. None of these, they're queries, none of them has an all-encompassing answer that we're going to find, but I hope they might be helpful things for us to have in the forefront of our mind. Are we losing confidence in sharing Quakerism with children and young people in our homes and in our meetings? How can our Quaker meetings link afresh with children, with young people, with young adults? with families. Are our meetings welcoming and inclusive regardless of how messy people's lives may be? How can we offer a raft of love for children and young people to float on until they reach a shore? These things are not easy. We'll journey together and think about this stuff as our weekend unfolds. In finishing, I want to say that this is all of our work. We all need to be involved. Don't leave it to the parents, to the people that maybe want to do children and young people's work because they've got a flair for it. This is all of our business. We all need to think about what we can do, because if we do nothing, by 2030, who knows how many children and young people we'll have left. A friend recently said to me, the line that's on the bottom of that slide, it takes a village to grow a Quaker child. And she unpacked that and said for her the village involved 4 things. Her village, when she was growing up as a Quaker, involved her family. It involved her meeting. It involved those events for children and young people which are age specific. And finally, it involved a well, a place of spiritual sustenance. So I wonder how we can be the village that will enable children and young people and young adults to grow in Quakerism.
So yeah, children and young people. I've got 20-year-olds and all the way down. I've got 4, all the way down to a 14-year-old. So I've been through it. I'm still going through it. Sometimes I feel like my head's going to fall off with all the stuff that they bring to me. But it's a joy. It's an absolute joy. So I am in the right position at the moment. I absolutely love working with children and young people. Over this weekend, you'll get to know more about the work of the Children and Young People's team. And last night, Howard gave us some insight into the work and why we do it. And we are thrilled that this Rep Council is overflowing with people wanting to look at how the work of children and young people fits in, and how children and young people are part of Britain Yearly Meeting. And I hope that after this weekend, we'll all be inspired to do things differently and look at what we're doing well and build on that. And look at how our meetings are doing this. Can I ask you to cast your mind back to when you were a child? Some of you may have a memory of sitting at the children's table for a meal. Unless you had a really big family, this tended to be on special occasions when you had guests. And the contrast between the 2 tables was often stark. Maybe with the adults eating in the dining room and the children in the TV room. The adults might have had real china. The children could have had plastic plates or the old crockery. The adults had maybe sparkling and interesting conversation, and the children's table might have been full of jokes and funny stories and bread rolls being thrown around and possibly custard snorting competitions. And I kind of think I know where I'd like to be. So 2 separate tables and 2 very different experiences. Does that sound like your family?
We all snort.
Does it sound like your meeting? In many churches and meetings today, there's an adult service and a youth or a children's meeting. Different tables. Is it good for children and teenagers to have their own thing? Absolutely. But in doing that, are we moving away from each other? Do you have time to get to know each other, hang out together, and learn from each other? Because that's how communities are formed, and lasting friendships are made. And this might be what keeps the children and young people involved. So what does this look like? Helen Chambers will be talking later of how we can make sure that all are welcome, so that we can grow our all-age communities. She'll be speaking of what real welcome looks like. Much more than just saying, sit here and be quiet. We would never welcome a guest like that into our homes. When we want to welcome someone, we find out their needs. We create a space that allows for those needs to be met, and we engage with them in meaningful ways. It used to be said that children and young people were the future of the church. But more often now you hear children and young people aren't the future of the church. They are the church. They aren't the future of the Quakers. They are the Quakers. They are the co-creators of the work and ministry of Quakers in Britain. And they found their spiritual home here, and they are helping us stay relevant. As part of our work on the Children and Young People's team, we organise events that cover ages 0 to 18. As well as being wildly exciting and great fun, these events are an invaluable way for us, the team, to meet and hear from children and young people throughout Britain Yearly Meeting. So this weekend we were keen for you to hear from some of these young people. We have a video taken at an event that I was on in the summer called Live Adventurously for 7 to 11-year-olds. It was shot whenever we had a moment, so that meant that someone had maybe just descended from the climbing wall or in between dinner and pudding. And as a consequence, the sound isn't very good. So if you miss anything, please come and ask me later, and I'll be able to fill you in. And then after the video, we've got some young people with us who've come along to share their experiences, and to whom we are very grateful. So now we'll watch the video.
So what are the things that you like and don't like about Quaker meeting?
Well, the things that I don't like is the fact that you have to sit around for an hour in silence. And the things that I do like is sometimes that you get to go out, and then whilst they're in the silence of the hour, you get to do stuff like make a card or something.
Well, I like the children's session because I get to know some children and it's nice to do it.
There's different grown-up doing children's meeting every time, and you don't have to do what's happening in children's meeting. You could go upstairs and do what the grown-ups are doing.
I don't like the fact that I'm the only child at my Quaker meeting, but I like the fact that it gives me some time to just close my eyes and think about the things that I feel I need to.
I like that it's really peaceful and you can concentrate while you pray.
Is there anything you don't like?
Not really.
The only thing I don't like about devotional is that at my Quaker meeting, I don't think there's many children.
I like how we've got a Quaker children's meeting rather than just sitting in adults meeting for an hour.
I like how it's basically like you do loads of fun activities in children's meeting, and if you want to, you can go into adults meeting.
Well, I don't like sitting too long.
I like the silence in Quaker meeting and it's time of reflection. The things I don't like is that there's usually no sort of kids in my meeting, so it leaves me and my sister to do all of like the kids work when we'd rather have to like talk to younger kids there as well.
So what would the very best Quaker meeting be like?
Probably lots of children my age who are interested in the same thing as me and respect each other's opinions.
It would be much quieter, so there's no background noise, so you can just be calm. And then also there would be lots of fun activities to do.
Not many children know about Quakerism, so it'd be really nice if lots of people did and they came and just experienced it.
It would be really inclusive and be full of people of different ages, colours.
The very best Quaker meeting would be like is biscuits and silence, because over tea and biscuits you can interact with people and silence is a time of reflection, so you get a bit of both.
What would your very best Quaker meeting look like?
A swimming pool.
When you go to Quaker meeting, what helps you feel that you belong?
That the kids get to say what they did.
The fact that I'm doing the same as everybody else, but I feel natural doing it.
What gives me a sense of belonging is that everyone in a Quaker meeting is welcoming towards you, even if you are just attending just one Sunday.
Because the Quaker meeting's not in rows, it's in a circle, and that makes you feel like you're in a circle of people who believe in the same thing as you.
We'll leave those charming young people with you. It was great fun. It was very hot, very, very, very hot. And and I was just delighted with the kind of stretch of the answers that we got there. They were really surprising. You kind of think you know what someone's going to say, and then they completely surprise you. And that's the joy of the work that we do and the joy of being amongst children and young people. So now we're going to hear from some young people here. I'm going to invite Emma up first of all. So everybody's chosen the questions that they wanted to be asked this morning from some that Howard and I cobbled together. We'll take a moment now and hear those questions. We're gonna have a go with a microphone. So if it goes wrong, then please just bear with us. Do you want to hold that? You're right doing that? Yeah. Okay. So questions with Emma. Emma is from Lancaster. We heard last night. So the first question, Emma, is: can you tell us about your Quaker life?
I think for me, my whole life is my Quaker life, and a life without Quakerism, that wouldn't be my entire life, and everything that I do, there's a part of Quakerism that's in that. And my Quaker life isn't when I go into meeting, it's not when I'm with other Quakers. I think it's possibly, I feel even more Quaker when it's just me and I'm demonstrating my Quakerism to non-Quakers, because that's my chance to be who I feel like I am. And I think my Quaker life is like how I demonstrate my faith to the world.
Great. So what is important to you about being a Quaker?
I think what's most important to me about being a Quaker is that it's my own Quakerism, and it's a faith that allows me to find my own, and it allows me the space and the support for me to find what I believe in and what I want to do. And I think there's no other aspect of my life where I get that kind of same freedom, and I think that's what's so important about every aspect of Quakerism.
Thank you. So, Emma, how is it for you being a Quaker at school or with your friends?
I'm really lucky to have my closest friend who's in my class at school is also a Quaker, and I still find being a Quaker at school so hard, and I can't imagine what it would be like without that friend and without my sister, and still standing up for my my Quaker beliefs. My school is kind of very heavily focused on things like technology, and quite often that kind of leads to militarisation. We have a very strong cadet force. We've had like a compulsory RAF engineering day, and standing up and saying I don't want to be a part of that is just so hard, because that's not what anybody wants to hear. As a young person, it's just kind of talking about religion. It's not something you feel like you can do. Your friends don't want to hear you say something which is like a moral belief, because that's sort of, they feel like you're instantly implying that you think they're wrong and that you're judging them. And really, I think for me, I'm judging myself and I'm changing my behaviour based on what I believe. And I think as a teenager in school and with friends, it's just really, really quite hard to do that.
Thank you. Which Quaker events have been helpful to you, and could Quaker meetings be like that?
I'm so lucky to have been able to go to so many events, both for young Quakers and also for all Quakers, and they've been a really, really key part of my Quakerism and how my faith has developed as I've got older. And I'm really lucky to have a meeting that supports me and all the other young Quakers to go out and do those things. I think for me the major one most recently has been summer school, because it's having that amazing Quaker community where it isn't an event, it's a community and it's an atmosphere. And I think that's something which all meetings should be able to look at. I think that's what we want to be like, that's what we want to provide for not just our young Quakers but every Quaker, because that is it's like a home, it's a place that I feel like I can really quite express myself and my Quakerism, and that sort of level of freedom to say what I believe is what I think every meeting should be like.
Thank you. What do you like or not like about Quaker meeting?
I think for me one of the wonderful things about my meeting is their readiness to embrace children and young people. We have a very active children's meeting, we have a youth group, and sort of every time I've kind of stood up and said something, I feel like kind of there's someone there listening and they kind of really care about young people and providing for every child in the meeting. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have such active young people in the meeting, because we have a meeting that kind of wants them to be active and does everything they can to encourage that. Something which I've felt more in recent years, which I've kind of, not just in my meeting, but other meetings I've been to for teenage general meetings and things like that, is one part where I feel excluded as a young person is ministry. Quite often the ministry and meeting can be quite highly biblical, it's quite intellectual, and sometimes as a young person I don't feel like I really quite understand that. And I think not only is it not benefiting me as it is everybody else in the room, but it's making me feel more excluded from the meeting, that I don't, if this ministry isn't for me, then maybe this meeting isn't for me. And sometimes I kind of, even when I feel like I have something to say, I want to minister, it's sometimes I feel like I can't because I don't have enough degrees to minister, and I'm not kind of old enough, I don't have the right experience. So I think that's something which I maybe don't like about meeting, that it's sometimes hard to feel like I'm Quakery enough to be a part of a meeting.
Thank you. Last question to Emma. What would the very best Quaker meeting look like?
I think for me, firstly, it would have to be all age, and not all age in terms of we have these young people, we're going to put them in a room and then get on with doing something Quaker. I think all age as it's everybody and it's together, and all age really does mean all age, and I think that's so important. I think also having sort of everybody in the meeting interacting with young people, and it's not just the responsibility of the parents to provide, and it's not the responsibility of the meeting to provide. It's the responsibility of the whole meeting to learn and interact and grow with the young people, and it's a two-way process, and sort of appreciating the insights of young people, and I think that's what an ideal meeting would do.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Helen. So our next young person is Daisy. Daisy, would you like that? Yeah. Okay. So questions for Daisy. Daisy, can you tell us about your Quaker life and what is important to you about being a Quaker?
Well, for me, Quakerism is more a way of life, like Buddhism is. It's an ethos, a way of thinking. So I take a lot of the Quaker thoughts into my life and testimonies. I wouldn't have managed to get through people like my stepdad, who was supposed to be my father figure, and my blood dad completely abandoning me, without being quite bitter, not only about them and about life, but about men in general, without trying to see it from their point of view, and trying to see them as not bad people, but just them doing a bad job, and that no one's perfect.
Thank you. How is it for you being a Quaker? How was it for you being a Quaker at school?
Well, I went to a specialist dyslexic school, but one of the things I've always been is quite a proud Quaker, and I was quite outspoken about that, but nobody in my school really knew what a Quaker was, so they all moulded it on me. And I used to wear headcloths and headbands quite a lot, and once a boy turned to me and said, "I met a Quaker on the tube the other day." And I asked him why he thought they were Quaker, and his response was, "Well, we were wearing a headband." Didn't seem to understand that not all Quakers wear headbands, because I might wear one.
Thank you. What is it that strengthens your Quakerism, and what helps you feel like you belong to a Quaker community?
So those are actually supposed to be two separate questions, aren't they? I put them together because the second part of the second question, answers for me first. One of the things, I've been to every conceivable young person's thing, and I've tried some adult ones. And the sense of community, the sense of belonging and non-judgment is really important to me. And that's really important to me, so that really helps me still become a Quaker.
Thank you. So which Quaker events that you've been to have been helpful to you? And could Quaker meetings be like that?
I've, as I said, been to all the young Quaker ones, and I've tried things like Lebanese. Actually, when I first went to my local meeting, they did have a young person's group. But that petered away very quickly, and it makes me sad because no one else has topped it up. As a person in the mid-20s, the frustration I feel is that when we do these sort of things, it tends to be focused on up to the 18 or 19-year-olds, and the people in the mid-20s are completely overlooked. And Lebanese is not even there anymore. And I don't go to Sundays anymore because I don't feel belong. I go to midweek meeting for worship because actually it has the same sort of energy as the young people's ones they did. So we need to find a way of getting older young people, so in their 20s, into it.
Thank you. The last question for Daisy is, do you think you will be a Quaker in 10 years' time?
Well, short and long of it is, yes, I became, or chose to become, a member at 17. It was my total choice. But to explain that a bit more, as I said at the beginning, I believe that Quakerism is more of a way of life, an outlook of life. So even if I don't go to a meeting, it does not stop me from being a Quaker, because I've got the Quaker values, the Quaker mindset in my head, and that's not going to go away. So please don't stop thinking of me as a Quaker, because I don't go to Quaker meetings at all.
Thank you, Daisy. Thank you very much. Next up is Juliet. How are you feeling about the microphone?
I can use the microphone, I don't
Okay, we'll go with that then. Okay, Juliet. So, Juliet, can you tell us about your Quaker life and what is important to you about being a Quaker?
So I think that my Quaker life is made up of several different things. I go to meeting, but I also get a lot of my Quakerism from the youth events I go to, and as we heard from Emma and Daisy, I think a very key part of that is how I live my life. I consider myself very lucky to have been a Quaker teenager. I think that Quakerism has really shaped me. It's made me feel a lot stronger in some of my convictions, and it's also made me a lot more accepting, I think, of other people's convictions as well. I think it's fantastic, all the ideas and opinions that Quakers have, and I think that every time I'm at meeting I learn something new from someone. And sorry, what's the second?
What is important to you about being a Quaker?
So yes, I think what's important to me about being a Quaker is that ethos that Quakers live by. I think the testimonies and the commitment to activism that I see in Quakers is something that I think is really important.
Thank you. How is it for you being a Quaker at school or with your friends?
I think I'm the only Quaker in my friendship group and in my sixth form as far as I know. I think that one of the most challenging things can be holding those convictions when people around me don't. So being a Quaker has led me to making decisions such as not joining the cadet force, wearing my white poppy around school, as well as trying to fly as little as possible and getting an ethical phone, and also becoming vegan. And while probably people in this room don't share all of those specific convictions, I'm sure you can all relate to having a decision that you made because of your Quakerism that makes you think differently to those around you. And I found that sometimes people feel kind of confronted, even when you just state a belief that's different. Even if you're not trying to persuade them, by telling someone that you do something differently to them, that makes them nervous. And sometimes it can be hard to just stay true to something when everyone around you thinks differently. The other thing that I've noticed about school is that older Quakers love asking about it. And believe me, as a natural introvert, I get it. It can be really difficult to start a conversation with someone who's very different to you. But oftentimes after meeting, it feels like that's what the conversation always comes back to. And after I did my GCSEs nearly a couple of years ago, for a period I really didn't look forward to coming to meeting, because everyone wanted to talk about my exams. That was the last thing that I wanted to talk about. And something that kind of took me aback was I had quite a lot of people ask me to tell them a list of my results. And that, for me, was quite confusing, not because I wasn't proud of my results, but because it felt so personal. It felt almost as if I'd asked them what their salary was. And I think that I get where this comes from, that young people, it's that divide again. Young people feel different. But honestly, I think what most of us would love is talk to us as you would anyone else. I really appreciate it when someone starts a conversation with just, how are you? Or how has your week been? Rather than, how is school? Because then I can tell you about school, but I can also tell you about something else. And that for me is really nice.
Thank you. Which Quaker events have been helpful to you? And could Quaker meetings be like that?
I think they definitely could. I'm lucky in that my meeting has funded my place on a lot of different events. And like Emma, Quaker Summer School has been a really big one for me. I think there's definitely something we can take away from how young Quakers create such a strong community in a matter of days. And I think one of the ways they do that is the little things to make people more able to be a part of the group. Something that we do at summer school, which I think is a really simple thing lots of meetings could do, is we have what we call prayer flags. These are, they're triangles so we can hang them on the wall during the week, but they don't have to be, but they're paper in the middle of the room. And for people who don't feel comfortable ministering vocally, they can write it down. And it's so simple, but it really makes a difference. By the end of the week, we just have lots of bits of paper hung up around the room for people who standing up and ministering would be a really scary thing. And it's stuff like that. I think that people are always checking up on others, which is something I see in Quakers as a whole, actually. But it's just little things that make a really welcoming community.
What do you like or not like about Quaker meeting?
Something that I love about Lancaster meeting is we do have a really thriving children's meeting and a young people's group, and that's been great. I've made loads of friends through that, and I think we're really lucky to have such an all-age meeting. But that kind of leads into what I don't like as well, because I think a lot of adults love having that. I love being able to say that they are part of an all-age meeting, but then kind of put it in a corner. And, well, I know that not everyone loves being with the 5-year-olds, for example. I think that we're not all 5-year-olds, and if we had more people willing to work with, say, maybe the 8 to 12s, I would have loved to have had sort of been able to separate the groups sometimes and have the younger ones running around doing painting, which are both wonderful things, but also being able to have that discussion. And I think often, and I see this all the time, the looking after children and young people is often the responsibility of the parents or grandparents, and also there are some absolutely fantastic friends who have been wonderful in, as soon as we as a young people's group mentioned that we'd like to talk about young people in our meeting, they have been right there ready to support us. But yeah, I think if all older friends could get rid of the idea that they're not good with children. Maybe working with the toddlers isn't right for you, but there are going to be some children and young people who you are good with and would really love to gain from your experiences.
Thank you. And the last question for you, Juliet. What would the very best Quaker meeting look like?
I think that the very best Quaker meeting would be a Quaker meeting that's open to change. I think that the danger is that Well, we think of the Quaker meeting as the hour of silence, which it is, but it's so much more. And I think this weekend is fantastic because it shows that Quakers are open to taking in new perspectives, and I think that more all-age meetings would be lovely, more events to engage with young people would be lovely. I think that thinking, does what we do, is that really suiting most people in the meeting? I remember being about 11 or 12 and wanting to try adult meeting for the first time. And there had to be a debate about whether it was okay for me to bring a book in and start reading halfway through when half an hour was enough for me. And I'm not sure that needed to happen. I think that I would have been much more open to trying adult meeting if people had said, do meeting as we will try and accommodate for you in our meeting. I think that just being open to new perspectives is what a meeting should be like for me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Juliet. And last but by no means least, we have Shivani. Shivani is from Leicester, but studying in Durham, so she's travelled far. There you go, that's for you. Okay, Shivani, we start with the last question that Juliet had. What would the very best Quaker meeting look like for you?
So we heard earlier, one young boy told us that his ideal Quaker meeting is a swimming pool, and I say to that, that's perfectly fine, and there is absolutely no reason why a Quaker meeting can't be a swimming pool. I often feel most Quaker when teaching tennis on a tennis court. I think we can come together through different things, whether that's sport, whether that's food, whether that's something we share in common. On Wednesdays, I walk with Durham Ramblers group, and I'm by far the youngest person, but we come together through a love of hiking, and that age difference doesn't matter at all. So there's absolutely no reason why Quakers can't swim together on a Sunday or another day of the week. And it doesn't have to be swimming, but I think my perfect Quaker meeting is about a Quaker meeting that is living out their faith in action, an active Quaker meeting that is changing people's lives or changing the world. And if we're doing that through swimming or walking or whatever that may be, I think that is perfectly fine. I think an hour of silence is just as important, and I attend a Quaker meeting, but if someone is in a swimming pool and not a Quaker meeting, I think that's equally valuable. And in a swimming pool, or wherever that may be, that's how we start to open up, I believe. There are many people that like swimming, just like there are many people who believe in equality but might not call themselves a Quaker, but they still have our values. So that's my perfect Quaker meeting.
Thank you. How is it for you being a Quaker at college?
So I went to school in Leicestershire, and George Fox was born in Leicestershire. But if you went to the front of my school and asked people who's George Fox, or even in Leicester City Centre, you wouldn't know. And when I grew up going to Quaker events or at school, or if you say to someone, I think many of us initially laugh on the surface level when people, if you ask someone who's a Quaker and there's a joke about porridge oats or whatever it may be, I think it's not as funny as it might initially seem. I think we can't get too comfortable with the fact that people may think that there's an association with Quakers and porridge. We can't get comfortable with the fact that I go to school in Leicester and or in Leicester City, there's no awareness perhaps of who George Fox was and our radical history. I think it's something we can't get comfortable with. Leicester Quaker meeting is about 200 metres away from Leicester University, but I don't see, there is no solid link there. But there's people sitting in those lecture halls talking about equality, talking about our world, talking about how we want to develop, how we can bring communities together. And there's people in the Quaker meeting potentially doing the same thing. and there is no reason why there can't be an established living there. Before I went to university in Durham, a lot of people asked me, and I asked myself, am I going to go to Durham Quaker meeting? And of course I was, and I'm still going there now, and I enjoy it. And are you going to join the Durham University Quaker Society? And again, yes, I did. But it took me a while to realise that I didn't necessarily have to be going to a Quaker Society or a Quaker meeting when at Durham to be a Quaker. There's about 3 to 4 people maximum at the Quaker Society, and whilst that it would be great to change that, I found that by going to Durham for Refugees Society or Amnesty International or People and Planet, there are people with the exact same values in those groups. My housemates I've got some of them are vegans, they're very keen to recycle. If I ask my housemates, do you care about the environment? Are we looking for peace or well? The answer would be yes. But if I ask them whether they're a Quaker, the answer is no. But that's okay, because I think if you take away the word Quaker for a minute and think about our values and whether the person opposite you on a dinner table or in a supermarket cares about a more equal world or looking for truth or aiming for peace, the answer is often yes. And I think I have a lot more in common with people than what the names may initially divide us about. So I don't think it's necessarily a problem that there's only 3 to 4 people in a Quaker Society, but there's many people in other groups that share those values. I think it's about coming together and engaging and looking out.
Thank you. Are there any challenges about being a Quaker?
I'd say yes, for me. So last year I was volunteering with a yearly meeting with the 11 to 15-year-old programme. And on the last day, I was working with a young boy who hadn't really spoke all week. And I said to him, oh, come on, you must have something to say in this session. Come on, what have you got to say? And we're talking about Quakers in the future. And he agreed to put his hand up, and he did. And he said, Quakers spend too much time on committees. They're always on committees. What are you doing? And he said he walks out of a friend's house and there's people on the street, either homeless or struggling. And I do appreciate our Quaker methods and the business method. I think they're very invaluable, but I think, again, that sense of getting too comfortable, I think sometimes there's that urgency of that, what are we doing, and whether things need to be done quicker, or do we need to, is there a problem right on our doorstep? And for that young child there was, and I'm really glad he was able to say that on the final day. Last year in March, a young friend at Woodbrooke, on a course on diversity, a young friend, well, he was older than me, said to me that he realised one day that he looked at his classroom at school and then looked at his Quaker meeting and / Quaker event and realised his classroom at school was a lot more diverse than his Quaker meetings, and surely that should be the complete opposite, if not as diverse as the classroom, considering what we hope to achieve and what our values are. And I think, yeah, there's definitely, we can't not necessarily change things or change the world or be Quakers unless we hear voices of everyone and step into other people's shoes and walk around in them. And we can't do that unless we're hearing other voices and other people. So whether it's diversity, class, race, whatever it is, I think it potentially is a challenge for some people.
Thank you. And the last question for you, Shivani, is what helps you feel you belong to the Quaker community?
So like I said, I do enjoy going to Quaker meeting, but if I'm doing it, I don't have to be at Quaker meeting to feel part of a community. If I am helping a child or working with a child, that is also being a Quaker. But I think for me personally, I do enjoy feeling part of a specifically Quaker community, and I've personally got that through volunteering with the children and young people's team each year. Last year, like I said, it was with 11 to 15-year-olds, and the year before that, it was with 7 to 9-year-olds, and the year before that was on a Quaker pilgrimage for children. And I think, as we saw from the children on the screen,
they find a sense of hope in that place. And for me, those children, last year, before my 6 exams at yearly meeting, working with those children, I came away with 40 new young friends, and that was amazing. But I think it doesn't just have to be there. I think the idea behind these events and behind the Children and Young People's team is bringing children together and bringing people together, because I'm brought together into that community and I'm not the same age as them, and it's not just about age, it's about bringing different people together and finding out what they have in common and how they can have conversations together. And I think that idea can be implemented into many different areas of our lives. And I think, yeah, a Quaker community is quite easy to find, because if I see that of God or that of good in everyone, then I feel part of a global community, because I think everyone is our friend, whether they're in this room or not.
Thank you, thank you. There's some really important and powerful things that the young people have said there. And we really appreciate your honesty and your willingness to come and share with us. I think what for me came through from listening was a real yearning for community. There wasn't specific, we want all singing, all dancing, apart from the swimming pool. It wasn't outrageous, and it wasn't rocket science. And I read this week that warm is the new cool. So the warmth of welcome that you give to the people that come into your midst, your Quaker meetings, that's the new cool. That's what people need. So there's no need to crack open your skinny jeans yet. We don't need razzmatazz and technology. It's very simple. We have got a bit of time left. I've got some more questions here, but the young people said that they would be willing to take questions from the floor. So if you have a question, if you speak it, and then whoever feels comfortable answering that question, they can. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So no specific questions, but just ask the question, and whoever feels comfortable answering that will do. Yeah.
Can I first say how impressed I am? Because I think half the room could not have stood there with a microphone and be so open about themselves as you all just have been. I think that's amazing. What struck me was, I think Juliet said, all they ask you is how's school? And I do the children meeting, I have a 14-year-old, and goodness me, every month I ask her, how is school? And I think that's a real eye-opener. I promise I won't do that again. But it is just a way for us to try and engage. I would like to ask the four of you, is there any other questions you would like us to ask you when you come to children meeting? I mean, you said, how are you, or how was your week? But are there anything else that we could ask you?
Can I? Or do you want to answer? Could we both answer it? Yeah, okay.
The thing to remember is that actually, without sounding too rude, you can very easily accidentally patronise by overthinking. I know me and Juliet have got the same IQ, more or less. We're very clever people, so ask us about things. In my community, a lot of my friends don't recognise that I haven't got so much IQ as her, but they're the same age. What I do for my friends is I ask them if they don't know what a word means. So talk to them about it, about whatever you want to talk to,
and then ask them if they know much about it or if they understand it. Start for me by assuming they do know you're on your level intellectually, and then check and then adjust to it rather than assuming that they don't know.
I would like to make the point that I don't want you to be scared about talking to young people. We're not going to get offended, whatever you ask us. Well, I think the thing with school is that I know why people ask it. It's because young people feel so different. But one thing that we will absolutely not be offended by is if you ask us, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do outside of school? In fact, that is a perfect question, because I know people ask about school because they feel they don't know what else to ask. And if you ask us about hobbies, immediately you have a whole list of stuff that you can ask questions about. We won't be offended if you say, I feel like I don't know you very well. Please could you tell me a bit about what you love doing? Because all of us love talking about what we love doing. It's the perfect start. But please do engage with your young people, because I've had some fantastic conversations with lots of people in my meeting about many things. There was a man in my meeting called Marcus who died not so long ago. But he was incredibly passionate about music, and his daughters went to the school that I go to now, and a lot of weeks we would have lovely conversations about everything from my school choir to him teaching violin, and I remember a couple of times keeping praying mantises as pets. I think Marcus really showed me how much I can learn from someone, and he showed me that by being willing to learn from me.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Anneke. Thanks very much for being able to listen to you. So I was giving thanks to you for being here and being able to listen to you. I wanted to ask the question, do you read Quaker Faith and Practice, and do you get inspired by it? I was at a British Yearly meeting, and there was a group of young people who were asked about it and what they would like to change in Quaker Faith and Practice, and what was their opinion.
Anybody interested in that question? We're all interested in that question. Anybody like to answer?
So for me, I haven't read the entirety of Faith and Practice, but when I see it there and it's next to me in a meeting, I will pick it up and I will look at it. And I think the part of it that I've found most inspiring is the section on people's lives and their stories. And when I read that, that's what makes me feel closer to Quakerism. And I think I would say that's the most inspiring part for me, because it's stories of other Quakers and it's the stories of the Quaker community and how people have given to it, and it makes me want to give to the Quaker community.
Okay, I've got something actually. I have a confession to make. I haven't read it. The reason why I haven't read it is that I'm very dyslexic, and even reading for fun, I usually listen inaudible. If it occurred to me that if we could do something like an audible version of it, because lots of biblical text is now gone into audible versions, that's another way to get kids to be more interested in our religion, and it would include them more.
I
would like to take up what Juliet said about us asking about what you like to do and your hobbies. And I think young people should ask older people the same question. And the reason I say this is because a couple of Quaker Live meetings ago, we had one of our meetings, during the meetings, was writing bits of paper, telling each other in the meeting where we were, where we came from, etc. And I wrote 3 sections of my life that I did. And the person that was asking me next to me was a young person. And she picked up my thing and she asked me, who was I? And how did I come to Quakers first? And I said, well, actually, I'm a geriatric rocker. And I used to ride a motorbike. And the first time I ever went to meeting was on a motorbike in all my leathers with my now husband. And we were very, very much accepted, actually. They took us for what we were. But this young girl's mouth dropped open. Because you look at us like we look at you in a certain sphere. We can't talk about anything else but school because we don't think you're interested in communicating with us. Now, I don't mean that in an unkind way. I mean that we are limited in what we can ask you. So this girl then went on to tell me that she was writing a book, and it was just a fabulous conversation, and it can be done. It can be done.
Thank you very much. Okay, over here. Helen's going to share.
I was wondering, I come from an area meeting where we have no real history of young people coming to summer schools, link groups, etc. How do we bring your message of the importance of those groups? How do we get that across to our young people whose parents have no history, really, of Quaker youth? How do we get what somebody calls soft signposting to them?
Do you want to go first? I don't mind.
I'm a true believer in building they will come. I came into my Quaker meeting with this already built. If there is devotion where they feel welcome, word of mouth works very well. And so it's making sure that there is a children's meeting ready and a young people's meeting ready. And possibly a little bit of postage advertising up front. Doing some young events or young going away things. My meeting has a thing called Charlie Manor, which then invites it all over. But I do believe that if you've got things which are openly saying, come, we welcome you, they will come.
About summer schools and link groups and stuff like that, I know certainly the summer school I've been to, but I think a lot of them are struggling because of this declining young people. And I was sort of the first of a new wave of young people at Lancaster. By the time we were there, the oldest young people were leaving for university and stuff like that. So nobody really told me about summer school for a few years because, or at least encouraged me to go because those older young people weren't there. So I think make sure you've got some adults in your meeting who know about this, so that if there aren't young people who are going to encourage others to go to events, that the there are some adults who know about the local events and make it their job to inform the 11 or 12-year-olds who are just getting old enough that those events exist, because I've now been to my last summer school as a young person, and I'm almost on a bit of a campaign to get as many young people to have that valuable experience I gained from. But I would really, if there are sort of, say, 8 to 10-year-olds in your meeting, find out what's about to become available to them and be ready to tell them, especially if you haven't got the older young people who will.
Thank you. I'm just going to do a shameless plug for a part of my work that absolutely feeds into that. We have children and young people's advocates around the countries, and I would encourage you to find out who yours is and support them. They don't do the children's work, they advocate for the children's and young people's work. Yes, yes.
Sorry, I'm not a young person. I think that the issue about things like summer school, which is so important, our area meeting pays for people. So it's very clear that it's something that's key. The other thing that, from my point of view as a parent, was the Britain Yearly Meeting has fantastic children's and young people's work. So if you haven't got a tradition in your area of summer schools, you can use that as a way of building up, because the young people, if they go to Britain Yearly Meeting, then meet a cohort of people who then go on to summer school. And so what you can do by that is create a tradition and a way of working people through. So encouraging parents to go to Britain Yearly Meeting residentials, because they have such fantastic children's programmes, which are very inclusive and very supportive, is a way perhaps of helping.
Thank you. There's a question over here.
Not a question, but a thank you. Shivani, you planted a radical seed for me just now, which is a whole paradigm shift. Because when we see stats that we saw the first evening, which are so powerful, but they open up in me a little bit of a well of despair, of thinking by 2030 no more Quakers, perhaps, or just these notions. And it linked to a moment I had with a Franciscan monk, who happened to be the sort of the chief guy internationally of all Franciscans. And when I said, what about the fact that there might not be any more Franciscan monks, he was radically open and said, no, it's going to shift now, and it's going to have to be in the layperson community. It's going to be a different thing. And I thought that was very liberating, what you said, that you found that Quaker value in all of these different groups, and it was a very expansive vision. And yes, it matters that perhaps there are Quakers in the world that use that name, but you've just shifted something for me, which I think is true to the spirit of George Fox and others. Or William Penn said it, right? We'll meet each other one day and we won't be wearing these liveries, and we won't be calling each other perhaps by these names and these outward forms, and we'll know each other. So thank you. That was kind of radical.
Thank you very much. I think we've got time for one last one. I feel like Annika Rice. Where's my helicopter?
I'm really interested to know if any of you have got ideas for how we can make our
basic core meeting for worship more engaging for children and young people. I just think that that is the absolute core. If we're going to be all age, then we have to find a way of worshipping together. And our area and my local meeting are good at separate things, and we're good at special events, and we have a camp where there's all age worship, but we don't seem to manage it in local meeting at all. The only, I go occasionally to our meetings. I know in Penarth they have the table with the books, and then underneath the table they have books for the children's books with they look to me as if they had a kind of religious theme to them, but there was some effort there, and I'm just wondering whether you've got any other ideas, what sort of age you wanted to participate in that, in what is called for us.
Well, for me, I started going into meeting maybe like sort of on a regular basis, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I think for me, it was a really major jump. I was kind of going from spending my time, I was getting slightly bored being with really small children, and it was starting to feel like that wasn't for me. So I was like, maybe I'm ready to move into meeting. And I think for me that it was a really big, it sort of felt like I was sort of suddenly in this adult meeting. There was no transition. And I think being able to talk to someone about kind of being able to sort of, like Jeanette said, about being able to maybe read for some of it, or being able to sort of setting up the youth group was something which was kind of, it meant that I could participate in meeting, but I still felt like a connection to a certain kind of young people's community. And I think just talking to the young people in your meeting and finding out what sort of would make their meeting a place that they want to be a part of, in a community that they want to, if they want to put like a chocolate fountain in the middle of a meeting room, maybe something like that isn't possible. But there are just little things that you just need to have those conversations and just find out what it is that makes the meeting an all-age community for them, because for me it's totally different from any other young person, and there might be similar themes. For me, obviously, things like being like books and like having people to talk to, but for somebody else that might be something completely different, and I think it just depends completely on your young person.
Thank you. Did you want to say?
I have a quick supplement.
Okay.
For my age group, the good model is Westminster meeting, because my age group in Westminster, they set up a lot of different things which the young people set up. So it's really looking to the young people and asking what they want. I've been to a couple and they had a thing where they did a topic, but it was in a worshipful way. So they sat there and then they would stand up and do a lecture, and then they'd stand and sit down and have a discussion, which is also similar to what my Tuesday meeting does. So it's that relaxed, much more casual way of doing it. I think a lot of kids, and definitely for me, speaking of myself and my age group, young adults, really enjoy and makes them feel inclusive.
Thank you very much. Two things. I don't think we should throw the chocolate fountain idea.
Fair trade. Fair trade.
Fair trade, of course. And the next thing is, I think this conversation could go on and on. And I think that that's why we're here this weekend, to have this conversation. I think you're welcoming questions over the weekend, do you think?
Yeah.
You're sticking around, so that's great. We also have a staff team here who wouldn't ever put themselves up as experts, but do spend all their days thinking about these things. And we are also around, so if you want to carry on conversations, if the staff members that are here could just maybe wave so that you know who they are. There you go. They've got staff member written here, so the clues are out there.
Thank you, friends. I think I'll take that as ministry and time to begin. I think I'd like to begin where we left off, in one sense, because there was a question about Quaker faith and practice, and did you read it as young people and as adults? If you don't know an exploration of the faith and practice of Quakers developed and edited by young Quakers living our beliefs, why don't you? Because it's brilliant. It is absolutely superb. It even condenses Advices and Queries' little red book into 42 single sentences. In Bristol area meeting, we used this week in our Becoming Friends group, which is of 12 people who've been Quakers, some for 40, 50 years, including being elders in our meeting, and one person who has been coming to local meeting for 6 months. It's such a good book. So I recommend the aubergine book as well as the red book. I also wanted to open with two emails that I've had this morning. One from a young teacher. She's a newly qualified teacher coming towards the end of her first and very difficult teaching year. She says, "Hi Helen, I've also got another interview for X school on Tuesday, so I'm preparing for both Y school and X school. And we've got a big mock stead all week at the school she's working at now, so all my lessons need to be brilliant next week. Feeling very stressed, but depending on how much I get done today, I'd really like to get to meeting tomorrow. Her partner's away on school trips, so it'll just be me. Sorry, I'm not being a very good Quaker at the moment. Life seems to be getting in the way." I emailed her back saying sometimes meeting helps, but do what you need to do, sort of thing. Another's a young man who I hadn't met until we began the Youth Participation Day encouragement to come to yearly meeting. A year last Participation Day, and that was enabled because we had a sufferings rep who liked young people, or at least was young people friendly. Since then, this young man has just done his second Participation Day. This is the first time he'd been to Quaker meeting for about 3 years. He's subsequently been involved in our consultations about having a youth worker. And he's emailed me saying, "Hi Helen, I've had a really good time at the Participation Day. It was good to see people that I'd met at JYM, and it was interesting to discuss diversity and Quakerism. I'm actually away at Woodbrooke next weekend doing the Facilitation and Leadership course, but I am free the weekend afterwards to meet up and have a drink if you're available." That's hot chocolate, I hasten to add. At the moment, I probably won't be able to make it on Sunday, unfortunately. Hope to see you soon, Sam. That's a young man I hadn't met until our nominations group said, "Do you think this would be a suitable young person to come to Participation Day?" So thank you, Quaker Life, because I know it's been quite a journey to make that available. And that's a young man who may not have still been a Quaker. Now it's absolutely integral to his life. Another young person who went to university at University College London this term, and who emailed me at the end of last week saying, yes, he was enjoying university, psychology is really interesting, and he so appreciated the green space outside Friend's house as a place to be at peace. And he thought he might even try going to Friend's house meeting next Sunday. That will be the first time for 4 or 5 years that that young man has been to a Quaker meeting for worship. Relationships, for me, are absolutely at the core of my Quaker faith. If I have a ministry, it's my ministry. The ministry of relationships, regardless of age, but I actually enjoy the younger, not the younger the better actually, probably the teens the better. So, all are welcome, transforming our Quaker communities with younger friends. This morning we heard from young people of varying ages, I won't be specific, about what helps to make them feel welcome in our meetings. Did anything strike you about what they said? Was it different from what many of us would feel welcome to help us be welcomed into a new place? Are there rules that we understand and others don't because we're part of the group that know about those things when others don't? Children usually will turn to a parent or a grandparent at such a time and ask what's okay. For many of the families who come to Quakers for the first time, they haven't got that authority figure to draw on. They may well be the first person in their family or friendship group who's had the curiosity and courage to cross our threshold. How do we reach out to them? How do we engage in their lives and concerns, whether it's for peace or to change the world, or simply to find a spiritual home where all are accepted for who they are and are loved? How do we enable them to feel part of our community and enable our community to be enriched by them and to be transformed by their energy, enthusiasm, contribution, and their needs as well as ours? Well, it was these questions and my own experiences and hearing of, I'm a single parent and Quakers seem to be all happy families, and I need a place of calm in my full-time working life. I haven't got anything left to give, that have informed All Are Welcome, the resource. The resource was launched by Quaker Life early this year, and we're now looking to find ways to ensure it can play a role in helping meetings reach out, connect, and be enriched. So how did this come into being? Well, as Howard said, I'm an elder with oversight, we bring those two roles together, at Redland Meeting in Bristol. I've been a Quaker Life children and young people's trainer for more than 20 years, and I think honestly and truly it's probably why I still do call myself a Quaker. They are very much that group, my Quaker community. I'm also an associate tutor here at Woodbrooke, and in fact a month ago I was here as a co-tutor in training elders and overseers. 3 years ago, I was here in 2015 for 6 weeks as an Eva Cox scholar to research and think about families. And I have to say at this point that that dialogue that I heard between Juliet and Sarah epitomises for me what I wanted to address, which is Sarah's comment, the importance of parents coming to yearly meeting, which I don't go to, so that they understand children and young people's activities, the importance of summer schools and so on. And Juliet's comments that she was passionate about our young people knowing how good that can be. But how do you do that if you're the only Quaker in your family? Your time off from work is limited. Do you really put a whole week to one side to take children away from their other parents, to go to a Quaker event which has significant cost implications? I know bursaries are available, but time is limited. So how are we supporting our parents our grandparents and carers, as well as our children. That was what I wanted to find out more about. My children and young people's trainer involvement meant I knew there was a lot of good training and support for meetings. But we, as trainers, are usually working with the children's helpers, and these are often parents, carers and grandparents. I wanted to use the 6-week scholarship to find out about how Quaker meetings engage with parents and carers, as well as the children. Advice and Queries 24 in the Red Book says, children and young people need love and stability. Are we doing all we can to uphold and sustain parents and others who carry responsibility for providing this care? In the back of my mind was a friend whose daughter has, and still has, a life-threatening mental health problem, and said, all the families at meeting are so neat and tidy. I didn't feel I could say what was happening in mine. It was just too painful. During my time at Woodbrooke on the scholarship, which I have to say was an extraordinary privilege to spend the time here that year, I researched in the library in Quaker sociology and theology and Western spirituality. I consulted the Quaker Live Children and Young People's team. I consulted the yearly meeting parents group, and I surveyed rather unscientifically 9 meetings by means of semi-structured questionnaires. I'm not going to go into detail about that work, because I could for a long time, because I'm passionate about it. However, there are just a few parents, grandparents and carer voices that I'd like to now bring into this room. So I shall now look at Sophie, if I could see her.
We are really aware that we are very lucky to live near to a meeting which is so supportive of its children, to have children's meeting regularly, and for me not to feel duty bound to run the children's meeting. I am a primary teacher, and it would be somewhat of a busman's holiday to do children's meeting. I relish the time in silent worship.
I came from a working class background, and I have a PhD. I felt I didn't fit in.
I think there has always been a tension for me between coming to friends as a family and wanting meeting to be an expression of my own spiritual journey for myself as an individual. I think that my life has been so defined by being a mother that sometimes I come to meeting just to be myself outside the family, and this, combined with having a partner who doesn't attend, has probably meant that I have given less thought and attention to being a Quaker family than I might have done. I also shied away from the unattainable, for me, image of the idealised nuclear family all attending together. Now that I may be in a position to bring my granddaughter to meeting for a while, the idea of being a Quaker family has a new resonance. It feels more comfortable, but in a loose-knit way, with various family members maybe dipping in and out of the Quaker pond.
I think that there is a real difficulty over welcome in many meetings, not just my own. I feel welcome in my meeting, but I hold a tension within me about what that welcome really means. At times, I perceive a reluctance from some members of the meeting to consider a children's meeting, so think that we are not welcome to come. I think that if I didn't know the meeting and hadn't attended before having children, I probably wouldn't even go. Welcome is not only in relation to children, but with the specific challenge where there is just one room and a kitchen which doesn't allow space for children's meeting. Welcome of anyone to meeting can be clumsy and unwelcoming, often because it's just the way that it's always been done.
C has firmly embraced Quakers and considers herself to be a Quaker. She attends meeting with me most weeks and completely embraces the silence and the quiet energy she feels at meeting. She is pushing for a school to offer religion, ethics and philosophy at A-level as well. I feel meeting has offered some wonderful examples of adults who are striving to contribute positively to the world and to listen to the small voice within. She's taken a lot in by being in meeting every week and looks forward to it. She's also been invited to events organised by my sharing circle, and that has been a lovely way for her to engage more closely with a smaller group of adults who are getting to know her as a person.
So those were just a few of the responses to the survey. Somebody else said, and I know him quite well, that he didn't really think that some of the adults in meeting really liked talking to children. So the report I wrote was titled, "Everybody Loves the Garden," based on a comment from a friend here who said, "Oh, everyone likes to see the garden, but not many want to do the work of the gardening." The report contained some suggestions for what I thought might be needed to help change what we do. It included the training and support for elders, overseers and clerks, and a set of queries for Britain Yearly Meeting, including how our apparently equal structures discriminate against parents and those with caring responsibilities. Who cares for your children when you are at local meeting for business, area meeting, meeting for sufferings, even Quaker Life Rep Council? Some are here and some gave thanks for those people who do take on those responsibilities to free them. In my professional life, I've written lots of reports and recommendations for action, and they're now gathering dust on many a set of shelves. And to my amazement and excitement, Quaker Life, with Woodbrooke support, wanted to go ahead and actually do something. Well, that doing was and is Quaker Life and Woodbrooke reaching out to elders, overseers and clerks, and those who have responsibility in our meetings locally and beyond, including you. We hope you'll work together today and tomorrow to connect with each other, discover ideas and intentions that you can take home and enrich and transform our society of friends into a truly all-age community, where, in the words of our faith in the future, all are welcomed and included, where fellowship and fun strengthen the bonds between us, enhancing a loving community. The All Are Welcome resource that was based on the advices and queries that I wrote in that original report has then gone on to be developed with parents and carers as well as elders and overseers in training here at Woodbrooke. So to the resource. Now I'm going to do the thing you're not supposed to do because you do have two of these in your packs. You could get them out now, and you may want to, and that's absolutely fine. So I'll give you 2 seconds to remember where you put it. Is it still in your room, etc., and then struggle with it. Because this is it, and it is revolutionary, I think, for Quaker publications, because it sort of has legs. And I think one of the challenges that I've picked up for you as Quaker Rep Council representatives, Quaker Life Rep Council reps, is how to get the ideas and enthusiasms that you gain here and give them legs. It's great to talk about it, but what do you do about it? So here's something that's sort of got legs. On page 1, it's an introduction. It tells you what it's for and encourages us to rejoice in the presence of children and young people and recognise their gifts, and asks, are you ready to learn from them and to accept your responsibilities towards them? We continue over, and these are the sort of sage green pages. I don't know if it was intentional to be thinking it was sage. It also references our faith in the future. On pages 2 and 3, it tells you how to use it. And then, the bit I quite like, and it took me ages to work out actually, is the standy-uppy bit. So it was like that. All you have to do is press that and it stands up. And if your meeting doesn't know what to do with this resource and can only do that, it's sort of a message, but please can you give it legs? Because it says advices and queries for friends who have responsibility for eldership and oversight, and that includes clerks, to reach out to families, connect with each other, and enrich our all-age worshipping community. So you've done something if you get that on the table. However, it would be wonderful if you can do more. Once you've learned how to stand it up, I can say that advice and queries number 2, which is, are our hearts and minds open to children, young people and families who come to our meeting, knowing that each person is an individual? Do we consider all are equal regardless of age and life experience? What opportunities do we have to learn as an all-age community, building friendship and trust across generations? How can we work together with those who provide children's meeting and not relinquish this responsibility to parents and carers? That was the advice that our children and young people's group felt was the most important. And if you want ideas of what it might look like in your meeting, they are here. In Advice and Query 6, how might you answer the how do we get to know people? Well, the recent Methodist Church research noted that a child's sense of belonging is enhanced by knowing 3 to 5 adults in their faith group. How many children could say that in most of our meetings? Are we trying? So since the all are welcome and all-age worship launch day in January, Quaker Life have written to meetings to find out what they've done as a result of the day. And the responses vary greatly. Cornwall and Devon meetings invited children and young people's trainers to come and work with their meeting. It's a long way to come to London if you live in Penzance. Others thought about what resources they already have to hand and what they could do to prepare. And others said they'd put it in the library. So, before you go into home groups, can I just mention what happened in my area meeting? And if you want more information, Eddie Nasor from Bristol, who is Quaker Life rep wonderfully, is here, and he can tell you more because he was one of the organisers. I wasn't. We had an all-our welcome day in an easily accessible meeting house with beautiful grounds to explore. They weren't sort of twee grounds. Each of our 7 local meetings considered 2 advices and queries in meeting for business during the 6 weeks before, then brought their responses to inform our day. Their original idea was to ask all ages to come for the whole day, but our children and young people's group suggested that children might join us at lunchtime for a scavenger hunt and then add to what had already been started in the morning. And then we'd finish with a 45 minutes all-age worship, followed by tea. It was a brilliant day and all ages mixed and chatted. In the week after, there were emails from local meetings that included, there was ministry and afterward about all our welcome. People really felt they'd opened up and made connections across our meetings, as well as considering the matters at hand. The lack of busyness about the organisation was positively commented on. I know that you wanted a fluid event, and it certainly seems to have pleased friends. Well done for not trying to cram stuff in. Somehow, all the 3 local meeting friends who were there found ourselves moved by it to minister this morning. Appropriately for the 5 complete newcomers, all young, who were unexpectedly with us and mostly stayed for active participation in afterward. We felt very blessed. Another local meeting sent a minute to the day.
We are grateful to area meeting elders who have asked us to consider section 1 of the new resource, All Are Welcome. We have spent the major part of our business meeting today discussing its implications. This has been done in the context of our decision to prepare an outreach pamphlet which could be circulated to the residents of the new housing being built, and the challenge of the Epistle of Yearly Meeting 2018. We must imagine this future, for if we cannot imagine it, we cannot speak it into existence. We have no children's class and feel out of touch. In the past, 3 friends have been DBS checked, but their certificates have expired. It is many years since children have been part of the meeting, and we have felt discouraged. How can we make ourselves ready for children? We feel we should develop a sample programme and procedures to be held in readiness, and that the meeting as a whole should be familiar with these. We need to investigate whether our hired accommodation is suitable for children, how we can have access to additional space on a flexible basis at short notice. We do not know how other meetings conduct their children's meetings, what support and materials are available to us from Friends House. Should we ask the children what they would like to do? What training is there within area meeting? We feel that 4 to 5 friends need to hold DBS certificates, and that they should meet regularly to agree programmes for the children, receive training, and consider introducing the meeting to all age worship. We should not be discouraged because so many of us are elderly. We can fulfil the role of grandparents whom the children could trust, but we must ask ourselves why we have not attracted children in the past.
I find myself heartened and saddened by this last response. Where can this meeting go for help? They're already busy and wanting to reach out in a vibrant, youthful town. But what can enable them to be ready for families? Quaker Life have a team of children and young people's trainers, including me, who can provide training and support for the meeting. Our ministry and outreach team wonderfully have connected into this and understand what an important element of work we are doing with them. We even have a workshop called Being Ready for Children. But who's going to ask us to come? Elders? Overseers? Clerks? Why will they if they and the meeting are actually very content and peaceful as they are? Maybe it will be you, Quaker Life reps, who can give legs and action to reaching out and enriching our Quaker community as an all-age worshipping group. Thank you, friends. Happy to take questions if anybody has them.
Can I ask a technical question, and maybe it's useful to others? We spoke about the DBS check.
Yes.
I have the children meeting, I am
Yes.
DBS checked.
Yes.
My idea was, one by one, to invite attenders and members to come into our meeting for one meeting and tell the children why they come to Quakers, maybe what their hobbies are, but something so they get to know everyone in the meeting, because they're only there for a few minutes afterwards. So I thought it would be a nice way to introduce everyone to the children, but does every single person need to be DBS checked to do that?
No, there are so many experts on this in the room, but everybody's going like that. So Jill is saying no. I mean, basically, if you're not doing it on a regular basis, no, and even then talk to Jill. My question is, are the young people or children interested in why people come to Quakers?
Well, yes, that was a very good question.
I mean,
maybe I should ask the girls what they would like to ask, rather than make it of myself.
I think that's a really good place to start, because I think one of the messages we had from young people was, Don't Ask Us About School, which Emma told me when we did our day in Lancaster, and I really tried to hold on to. But it's also, well, why do I come to Quakers? Well, because I'm made to, in the case of the young people, often. It may be because, and I have to say, I'm thinking one particular 13-year-old at the moment when I say this, because Mum, I really want to go. And then a young man who said, and I go back to the swimming pool, it's like swimming, Mum, and it's like riding a bike. If you don't do it, you get out of practice. And it's interesting because somebody in my sharing group emailed me this week and said, I've not been able to come for several weeks and I'm just wondering whether it's worth coming back.